All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jonathan from Generate, and welcome to this month's important webinar on the topic of leading, engaging, and productive meetings. Today, we have a fantastic speaker and expert in business, leadership, and marketing, Jennifer Myers, who is passionate about helping businesses succeed. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items to mention. At the bottom of your screen, there is the Q&A button that will pop up the Q&A box where you can enter your questions, and Jennifer will address these questions towards the end of the webinar. Also on your screen, there is the chat function, and you can toggle who to send your comments to, whether that be to everyone on the webinar or to the panelists and host only. Finally, we are recording this webinar, and if you would like a copy of this to share, please let us know via the chat and we can arrange this for you after the webinar. Now, without further ado, please welcome our speaker, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jono. I appreciate that. And team, welcome to our August webinar, or the August installment of our webinar series. We turn up here every month for you over a lunchtime in the hopes that you're able to quickly log in, grab your lunch, sit down at your desk for a few minutes and learn something that can help you moving forward. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to talk about leading, engaging, and productive meetings. So you'll notice that I'm by myself today. We are Generate Business and Life Solutions, and basically we specialize in working with dental and medical professionals all over the country. So usually when I run up these slides, there's two of us here, and we have a little interview and an interaction session, but it's just me today because Craig has been ill for a couple of weeks. So he's been out of the office. So you have me today. So that's me, a little bit about me. I have a lot going on. I wear a lot of hats, but this is, my passion: leadership, communication, helping folks run better businesses and be more effective is, that's my game. So I love that. I just noticed that one of our attendees popped in and popped out. So hopefully you'll come back into the session. So what does Generate do? Generate Business and Life Solutions. We focus in on helping our clients from soup to nuts, from big picture strategy. What do you really want to accomplish in your practice going forward? What do you want it to look like? Getting really clear on how you want your business to serve you. And planning, right? So taking that big picture and moving it down to putting those goals into practice. So we support you to bridge that gap between knowing and doing by helping you create sensible plans to implement to achieve your goals. We focus on growth, and growth looks different for every single practice that we deal with, right? So whether growth for you is expanding where you are, whether it's adding another practitioner, whether it's moving into a different demographic, growth looks different for everyone, and we can help you work through what it looks like for your practice and kind of help you get there. And exit. What happens when you're ready to step away from the office, step away from the chair, and do whatever's next? What is that? And how can we make sure we make that happen? How do we do that? Yep, through relationships, education, and resources. Why use us? We're small, but we're big enough to be able to offer you heaps of value. And we come to you, right? So we're here based in New Zealand, serving New Zealand businesses and practices. So no need to travel to Oz, which you can't really do right now anyway. And yeah, no need to come up to Auckland. We're based in the Waikato, but we travel anywhere around New Zealand. So yeah, we've got a great team behind us, not just myself and Craig, who you normally see here. So welcome to the topic today. This is what we're going to be covering: how to run meetings that don't stink, right? So when we run through the information today, we're going to talk about, do I even need a meeting? The 4 different types of meetings that you can, and I would say should be running in your business and in your practice. Who do you need to have around the table with you? Who's going to help you to have a productive session? And we'll talk some statistics here in a minute that are quite interesting about who's around the table. And then how do I run it effectively? While I'm leading that meeting, what are things that I need to remember to do to make it the most effective I can? There's a bit of an offer at the end that I'm going to share with you that's just for you guys today. And then there's a resource that I'll be sending out to those of you who are registered today directly by email. So that's called the Effective Meetings Checklist. So hang out for that and we'll get that out to you. Now, we've all been in meetings like this, right? We've got people you know, she's looking at her nails. He's kind of looking terribly bored. Somebody's actually sleeping. I have attended meetings like this in my lifetime, and I have facilitated meetings like this in my lifetime, right? So we've all been there when it's been a total waste of time. The meeting didn't start on time. It ran on and on. People were doing other things. They weren't engaged. And things weren't decided on. There were no action items that were settled on at the end of the meeting. And if there were, yeah, there was no follow-up after that. So the meeting was really a huge waste of time. So yeah, why I'm here today is so that you can run meetings that keep your team engaged, so you don't put them to sleep, and actually accomplish something useful for your practice. I'll be sharing this info in light of the fact that some of you might once again be delivering to folks who may need to connect virtually. They may not be face-to-face with you. So depending on where you're at in the country right now, you might be able to pull together face-to-face meetings with your team, or you might be connecting with them via Zoom, Microsoft Teams, whatever you happen to use for your group. So yes, here we are again, eh? Now I've got a picture of this really cool hat that I found, and basically the idea with that is not that you want to wear a crazy hat to facilitate your meetings. You can, it could be kind of fun, but a key responsibility of a team leader is to run effective meetings. It's just another one of the many hats that we need to wear every day, right? There's a lot on our plate as a practice manager, as a professional, service deliverer, whatever your role is within the practice. There's a lot of things that you need to pay attention to every day. And one of those things for you might be running meetings. So again, it's just another one of the hats that you wear. Meetings in theory are meant to help people brainstorm, come up with you know, problem solving discussions, come up with new ideas, overcome obstacles, and drive productivity, right? So keeping track, right? Staying on track with projects that you might have going in your practice at the current time. So meetings, in theory, are meant to accomplish any and all of those things. But they often end up being about as useful as an Instagram story or a Facebook story. You know, lots of ideas thrown out there, but then they disappear into the void really quickly with very little follow-up. So they really become quite useless. As a matter of fact, someone actually measured how much time is wasted and how useless most meetings really are. So if you look at your screen here, I'm going to pop up some statistics. So the free online scheduling service called Doodle studied 19 million meetings and interviews across the US, the UK, and Germany. And in 2018, what they found was that poorly organized meetings cost businesses in the UK $58 billion. That's a billion with a B. In 2018, and a huge 399 billion with a B, dollars in the US. Further, 44%, I'm sorry, I forgot to pop up my number, 44% of their respondents reported that poorly organized meetings prevented them from being able to complete the rest of their work. 38% believed that poor organization of the meetings contributed to a loss of focus on key projects. So this is kind of that whole, you know, we have some momentum, we get a great idea going in a meeting, and we say we're going to push it forward. And then if we don't have really well organized meetings after that and we don't follow up, then yes, we lose momentum on key projects. And really interestingly to me, 31% reported that irrelevant meeting attendees, right, people who didn't really need to be at the meeting, actually slowed organizational progress. So fascinating, right? Having the wrong people around the table actually held that organization back from achieving what they wanted to achieve. So I just found that fascinating. I'm sure you can relate to some of that pain, because I know I can. Whether it's in your current role or in a previous life, I'm sure that you've experienced some of this going on where you've been. So The first question you need to ask yourself, and I gave you a little snippet in a picture into this the last time we had a webinar, because I gave you a little snippet of this topic, but the first question that you need to ask is this meeting even necessary? Do we need to have a meeting about this issue, or is there something that I can, is this something I can achieve by having a conversation with one other person, often on a conference call with 2 other people, or through an email exchange? Once you've actually decided that you're going to have a meeting, you need to decide what kind of meeting it needs to be. So there's a book by a guy named Patrick Lencioni, and it's on the screen now, and it's called Death by Meeting. I can relate to how that guy at the end of the table on the book there feels, but Death by Meeting. And in that book, Patrick contends that there are 4 types of meetings that truly effective practices should be holding consistently. Now, before you give me a little bit of pushback on that idea and say 4 types of meetings, come on, Jen, just open your mind for a minute and just be open to the rationale that Patrick lays out in the book. So keep an open mind. Yeah, just hang with me here for a minute. So the first type of meeting that Patrick talks about is the daily stand-up. The daily stand-up. Now, this is a 5-minute meeting, and in a previous life, I used to run a sales team, right, for a group of hotel conference center places in the States, and my sales team would all hop on a conference call if they weren't in my office, or if they were all in my office, we would just literally stand up. You do not want people to get comfortable for this meeting, otherwise it'll go on too long. So your daily stand-up is literally a 5-minute check-in. It should include everyone on the team. So everyone on the team is there. And the purpose of doing the daily check-in is to help avoid confusion about who's focused on what for the day, to avoid double handling of things that might need to be done, to help people help each other. So if I know what Susan's working on, then I can perhaps help her when I get an extra minute. So it's really just a here's my focus for the day. And it's also an opportunity for people to put forward if they're stuck on something, right? So if you've got someone in the practice who's been assigned a task, or, that they're a little unsure about accomplishing and finishing, then they can say that in the meeting and say, hey, if anybody has an extra minute today, could I chat to you about blah? And get some clarity around that. So it's really for clarity and avoiding confusion and keeping things moving forward day to day. This can easily be done if you need to. If you've got a couple of different practices, right, with a big team who are across a couple different sites, this is easy to do over Zoom, Microsoft Teams, conference call, whatever you choose to use. That's a great way to accomplish that because it keeps it short and sweet. The second type of meeting that Patrick mentions and talks about is the weekly tactical meeting. So the weekly tactical meeting should be 45 to 90 minutes, right? So with my teams, I run daily stand-ups. I run weekly tactical meetings of 1 hour, right? We schedule in an hour and we run to an agenda. So the weekly tactical meeting is really there for the purpose of resolving issues and prioritizing what needs to happen during the week. So, just like it says, what are we focused on accomplishing this week? This isn't big picture meeting time. This is operational time. So what do we need to discuss this week? Do we have a challenge that we need to discuss? Is there something we need to work through that is preventing us from accomplishing what we want to this week, and clarifying those weekly goals? So again, the people who have responsibility for projects, for key success metrics in your practice should be in attendance at that meeting. That does not need to be an entire team meeting, right? So just the daily stand-up needs to be the entire team. Weekly tactical does not. The third type of meeting is the monthly strategy meeting. Now, the monthly strategy meeting, if run correctly, can help your practice stay on track with your goals and address any other issues that crop up on a slightly bigger picture basis. So set aside a couple of hours, maybe a half a day for that if you can, so that your attendees can engage in problem solving, higher level thinking around things that are affecting how the practice runs, that are perhaps new opportunities, right? So we're thinking of bigger picture thinking here. And again, not every team member should be at the strategy meeting. So that monthly strategy meeting can be done on site as long as there are barriers to distraction, right? Because you want that time to be productive. And so as long as that can be a focused time for the team to get together, monthly strategy meetings can be very effective. Finally, Lencioni says that the fourth type of meeting is an off-site quarterly review. Now, this is where the team can get out of the office, away from the distractions, and really focus on big picture. This is for the whole team, in my opinion. This is for the whole team to come along, have a bit of team building, some training, rapport building, and really discussing, hey, are we on track with our big picture goals? What else can we do? How do we want this practice to look? And how do we need to change anything this quarter in order to, adjust our path at all in order to reach our big picture goals? So that fourth type of meeting, that quarterly offsite review, is all about overall strategy, continual improvement. A few sessions ago, we covered, I think one of the tools that we covered was the plus 1% worksheet, right? So it's looking at everything in your practice with really critical eyes to say, okay, with all of our patient touch points, this is what we do. Is there any way we can do any of that just 1% better, right? Little small changes that can all add up to a big improvement. So that kind of an exercise, I'm often asked to facilitate these types of meetings with my clients, these quarterly reviews. And if you have an outside facilitator help you, A, they can help keep you on track time-wise and help keep discussion productive. B, they can provide some team building activities, right? Because that's kind of what they do in a way. They can also help you with tools like this, right? The 1% worksheet, plus 1% worksheet. That's a great thing to do with your team at a day like this. So you're really talking big picture, exploring new opportunities. What else can we do, right? As a team to get everyone's input. So those are great sessions. These are probably the only type of meeting that you might struggle to do. Not that you can't do, but you might struggle to do remotely if you've got a few different locations. It can be done if you've got someone who is skilled at web delivery to help you pull together, right, a day's worth of content remotely. It can be done just like an online virtual conference, right? But yeah, great to be face-to-face for these because that's really good team building time. All right, now I can see you shaking your head. I know I can see you, even though I can't see you, you're shaking your head and you're saying, oh my God, Jen, there's no way I can hold all of those meetings. I thought you were going to tell me how to be productive with the meetings that I have rather than bury me in them. And I get it, but I can absolutely vouch for that. I've done it and I've watched it, right? Practices that run regular, consistent meetings, whether it's all 4 of these or whether it's 3 of the 4, if they're really consistent with them, they notice the difference. I just talked to a group on Tuesday morning about this same topic, and I was asking for a little bit of feedback from the team that we're on, and one of the team members said, you know what? I can tell a difference when we're being consistent with meetings because the team is more engaged, we're more motivated, and we accomplish more, we achieve more because we're regularly being reminded of where we want to go and how we're going to get there. And we're talking about it, right? We're sussing things out. So it absolutely works. So choose what type of meetings will best suit your setup, your team, and what you want to accomplish. I would suggest, picking 3 of the 4. Some places the daily stand-up isn't particularly applicable. For others, it's fantastic. So really kind of depends on you and your team. If you want to pick my brain about it, email me, whatever, get in touch. I'm happy to chat with you about what might work for you guys. So, yes, those that do those regular meetings, like I just said, enjoy. Oh, there's the good grief. Yeah, good grief. I was getting behind myself here. The benefits of having the right meetings at the right time consistently is better team engagement, clarity around where you're going and what you need to be focused on, and momentum, achieving more. So I highly suggest that you sort out your meeting plan. Now that you know that you need a meeting, what type of meeting you're going to run, who needs to be there? What kind of qualities are you looking for in the people that you invite to that meeting? Because remember, I said not everyone needs to be at every meeting. So once you've made that decision to hold a certain type of meeting, it pays to really think about who you want around the table, right? Or on Teams or on Zoom. So you've got the right people there. Since we saw earlier on that 31% of the respondents to that doodle survey said, if we have the wrong people at the meetings, it really holds everything back. So people that you're looking for to invite to your meetings have a few specific qualities. One is an open mind. Remember, in the very beginning of this, I said, keep your mind open. We're talking about 4 different types of meetings, right? Suspend judgment. So you want people who will bring an open mind to the table. You want folks who have ideas and are not afraid to voice them. And we'll talk in just a little bit about how to, that you're going to have some folks around the table who might have great ideas but are afraid to voice them. So people who have open minds and have ideas that they are not afraid to voice. You want people who have an action bias. So that means that they're, standing ready to implement whatever's agreed on, right? The action items, they're ready to go. Just point me in the right direction and I'm away. So you want people who are happy after that meeting and after you've settled on action items to say, yep, I'll own that. I'll take that forward. And people who will bring their own take to the topics being discussed. And what I mean by this is you might have someone who brings a great idea to the table and someone else can say, oh, you know what, Craig, that's a really great suggestion. And I think a way we could even make it a little bit better is blah. So it's really digesting what's being said and then repeating that, but with something better added on, or a tweak or an improvement, or maybe, questioning that to say, that's a great idea, but have we thought about how that's going to impact the administrative team, right? So it's really engaged discussions that you want from your meeting attendees, which means having the right people there who are able to engage in a robust discussion with you to help accomplish things moving forward. All right, so that's who you're looking for in your meetings. And I'm hoping that as we're going through this, and as we went through those qualities, some faces of your team members are popping into your brain. Sue always has great ideas. And you know what? Bob's the questioner, but it's really important that he questions ideas because it makes sure that we've got them right, So it's just ensuring that you've got a good mix around the table. Now, how do you run your meeting effectively? So now that you know what type of meeting you're holding, who you're going to have around the table, you need to ensure that you've got 4 essential elements in place to ensure it's run in the right way. And these 4 elements that we're just getting ready to launch into apply to every meeting type we covered earlier. So each of these elements applies to the daily stand-up, to the weekly strategy meeting, a weekly tactical meeting, to the monthly strategy meeting, and to the quarterly offsite review, right? So they apply to every one of them. The first thing you need to do, which we briefly covered the last time when I gave you a little sneak peek, is plan ahead, right? So the first thing you need to do is plan ahead. And when you do that, I want you to think about a few specific things. Identify your desired outcome. Why are you holding this meeting? And what do you want to achieve as a result of holding the meeting and having people invest their precious time to come to the meeting with you, right? Number 2, look at how you physically need to prepare for that meeting. Is it, having a whiteboard at the ready? Is it having notes and pens for everyone? Is it putting chocolates out, to reward people if you're going to do a little bit of a training or review? Is it audio visual? Do you need to have slides or show a video, or, you know, make sure everything's working, test it first? So it's just really thinking ahead about the physical setup for your meeting. Do you have a quiet place to hold it where everybody can fit comfortably? Do you need food? All that kind of stuff, depending on what type of meeting it is, determines how you prepare for that physically. The third one is to write your agenda and communicate it to the team well in advance, right? You don't necessarily need an agenda for a daily stand-up, right? It's just being clear with everyone what the purpose of that daily stand-up is. For your weekly, monthly, and quarterly meetings, you darn well better have an agenda. Otherwise, those might meander and go off into territory that isn't helpful. So write your agenda, put timings around it, right? So you can keep yourself to time and not run over and dishonor the time that people have committed to you. Yeah, don't wing it on the day. Because I've done that too, right? So when you wing it, you have less chance of success, right? And having a productive session because you're not working to a plan. Now, the second step you need to do, once you've decided to hold that meeting, how you want to run it effectively, the second step is to set clear expectations. Clear expectations. And I realized as I was looking at the slide that I chose, it's just ever so slightly out of focus. So clear expectations plus clear communication will give you a clear outcome, right? You want everyone attending your meeting to understand the purpose of the meeting, why they're there, and what a successful outcome will look like. Now, I know you don't know, what the end result is going to be, but you have a goal for that meeting. So it's clearly saying, sweet, at the end of this meeting, team, I want to make sure that we come up with a better process for fill in the blank, right? Whatever that is. So the team knows what they're working toward, setting a goal. So this means that communicating an agenda that tells them those things ahead of time so they can come prepared is key, especially when you're being strategic about who you're inviting to your meetings, right? So ensure that everyone's prepared to have the best possible discussion on the day. Brilliant. So, and also give them an opportunity to add something to the agenda if it's relevant. So, especially for your weekly meetings, your monthly meetings, and your quarterly reviews, make sure that the team gets the agenda well in advance, and you invite them to say, hey, have you got anything relevant that relates to what we're trying to accomplish that you'd like to add to the agenda? And, it's up to me, but yep, we'll either add it or we won't. Or maybe that's a bit of a side issue that we can just discuss. So yeah, give them an opportunity to have input. The third step of running an effective meeting is to stay on track or stay on point. Stick to your agenda and your timings, right? You'll notice whenever I'm running these sessions, I frequently look at my phone, which is always off on my desk, to see what time we're at, see how much time I've left. So it's really making sure that you do a good job of sticking to timing. I was meeting with a client the other day, and he was in the boardroom with me upstairs in the building here. And I'm sorry, my chair's squeaky. His personality profile is extremely detail oriented. So we're talking, if you guys remember the discussions we've had recently about DISC behavior styles, he is a C through and through. So a C means that he's reserved and task oriented. So he's all about the detail. And he keeps time on his own in our meetings. So we had a meeting the other day, and I hadn't seen him for a long time. And he's a former client who's now coming back around. I said, oh, it's been a long time since we've sat down together. Cool. So this is what we want to discuss today. Great. And he wrote down his little agenda for the day, which is cool, in his notebook. And I did my bit. We agreed on our timing, and I did my bit, and then he had a little bit that he wanted to do. And he said, Jen, good job staying on time. I thought that perhaps, I usually think that when I meet with an I, so I'm an I personality, right? Influencing on big picture, not detail oriented. Sometimes I go off on tangents. And so this client says, Jen, I thought I was going to have to keep you on track, because a lot of times when I meet with I people, I have to kind of make sure they stick to time, but you did a great job. Thanks for that. I said, yes, I know, because I know your personality style. I knew that you would appreciate that. So I was watching the clock. So understanding who's around the table with you is really important, right? We'll get to that in 2 seconds, but stick to the agenda, stick to timing, and create a place to record topics that might come up that aren't directly related to what you're discussing and what the goal of the meeting is. So in the States, we call it a parking lot, right? Here it's a car park, but whatever you want to call it, a piece of paper over on the wall that you can jot things on, a note pad right next to your agenda. Whoever's taking minutes, if you have minutes taken, somebody records everything and sends them out afterward. Make sure that you have a place to note down topics that probably should be discussed at some point, but don't really relate to the topic of the day. And you can diplomatically redirect someone if they start going off track. And this is a skill that you learn once you practice and practice, right? So it's like, hey, Katie, that's a great comment. Thanks for bringing that up. But I think maybe we're going to park that for the next meeting. Or, maybe you and I'll take that offline one-to-one. So, I'm just going to note that down here. So it's just kind of handling those things as they come up and being aware of when you're going off track. Sometimes you might have someone in your meeting who, is like me and loves to talk and chatter and might start with a really good thought and then kind of veer off into a tangent that's kind of related, but not really. So you need to know how to bring them back around and say, that's great, but I think we need to make sure we stay on topic today, but thanks for that, right? So decide how you're going to handle the different communication styles around the table. So let's think about that DISC stuff, right? So the last session, I think it was the last month, we ran the DISC session for you guys, which was, personality styles, D, I, S, and C, dominant, influencing, stable, and compliant, and the different communication needs that each of those people have. So, look at the information that you had there and say, cool, I know that my people who are Ds on my team, the dominants, are going to want to control the conversation, and they might want to step in and, take over the meeting. Not intentionally, but that's just kind of how they're wired. So how are you going to diplomatically get those people back in line? They're also going to ask what questions. So the D or dominant people in your group, those drivers, are going to want to see bottom line. What are we trying to accomplish here? What is it that we're going to do after this meeting? So they're really going to be asking what questions. The people around the table with you on the team who are I's, like me, are the ones who are going to be holding the side conversations with the person next to them because they're social. They enjoy chatting. They like to have fun. So if they're getting bored, if you're losing them, they're going to start talking to the person next to them. So these are going to be your disruptors, right? The folks who are, just not paying attention all the time. So again, they're going to be the ones who, because they're so social, they're going to want to know who is going to be doing certain things. So you have to answer the who questions for them. Who's going to be doing that project? And am I going to be doing that with anybody else? Right? I'm so social, I don't like doing stuff on my own. So, give me some company. So the who is going to be important to them. Your S's, your stables. These are quiet, reserved ones. People-oriented and really kind, but very quiet. So they're not going to want to speak up. So you may have to be clever about how you get them to open up in discussions and give their opinion, because S's have great input to give. They're just often reluctant to speak up in a group setting. So how do you include them in the discussion? You know your people, so be clever around how you can make them feel safe and comfortable to share their opinions in that setting, right? They're also likely to ask how questions, because S's really like structure and they like certainty. So they're going to ask how questions. How are we going to do that? How's that new process going to look? Now, you may not know the answer to all of the how questions that these people have, because depending on the type of meeting you're in, you might be throwing new ideas around, right? Oh, let's do that. Let's figure out how that looks. So, you might have to redirect that how question to, you know what, Tom, I appreciate the fact that you want to know how that's going to look right now, but we're working on that. And I'd love your input to help me create that process, right? So it's those how questions that you're going to get from those people. And your C's, like my client I was telling you about, are going to likely be, those compliant people are going to be your devil's advocates. They're going to ask a heap of questions. So be patient with C's. And they're going to ask a lot of why questions. because C's value perfectionism and precision and detail, you need to provide enough detail to keep them happy along the way, but maybe give them additional detail after the meeting, right? So your C's are always going to be asking your why questions because they need to have things proven to them, right? Prove it to me. Why is that a good idea? Why should I be on board with that? And they're going to be, yes, you have to be careful if you have a C on your team and you understand that they're a C, right? And not, you want to acknowledge the fact that they're a valuable part of your team, and you want to try to not prejudge before they speak and think, oh, here comes the wet blanket, right? Because sometimes to big picture people, the C can come along and go, right, and try to shoot something down because they're really just trying to understand it and understand why it's a good idea. They're not necessarily trying to be negative. So it's putting aside some of your maybe natural tendencies to prejudge what people are going to say before they say it on your team, right? So yeah, everyone brings something valuable to the table, and it's your job as a leader and a leader of these meetings to acknowledge everyone's unique contribution to a meeting based on their personality style. Wouldn't it be great to know who you had around the table? I don't know if you guys have ever done work with your team on behavior styles and how they affect communication, but we're DISC specialists. We live DISC, we breathe DISC. And when you understand who you have around the table and what their profile is, and when everybody else understands what they are, it's so empowering, because your meetings then become even more productive when you understand what people need, what they fear, because that comes out in how they interact with you, you know, and what motivates them. So really good information to have. You can, you know, when you know who you're dealing with, you can include those people who are shy in a way that makes them feel safe. You can manage the driver effectively who kind of wants to take over. And, you know, without making them feel disempowered. So it's really about you acknowledging and understanding everybody's contribution and managing that in a good way. So DISC information, if you want to be able to DISC your people, ask me, I can help you with that. We can sort that out, and I'll tell you about how you can do that in a minute. So here's a last tip for running effective meetings. Regularly reminding your attendees of the desired outcome or the goal of the meeting helps stay on track. So, you know, it's like, okay, team, while this discussion is fascinating, I really think it's important that we get back around to blah, sorting out this process, whatever the goal of the meeting was. So redirecting, you being on top of things enough to redirect when it's appropriate, to stay on track and stay on time is important. Now, remember, a second ago, we just talked about knowing who around the table, you know, who's around the table in your meetings. If you knew everyone's DISC personality style around the table, wouldn't that make it a bit easier to run more effective meetings that engage the participants on a deeper level? So in just a minute, I'm going to share with you how you can have your own 30-page extended DISC profile for you, so you understand how you behave as a leader and a communicator. But you can also improve you know, how you deal with your team by understanding who's around the table with you, and we can do that for a team as well. So I'll tell you about that in just a minute. But the fourth and final thing you need to do when you're running effective and engaging meetings is to clarify next steps. Clarify next steps. So who's going to own each action item that you settle on? And by the way, it's your job as the leader to help people settle on action items, right? So that's coming up here in just a second. But yeah, but looking at, you know, clarity, who's going to own each action item? How long are they going to have to complete it? We're so much more effective when we've got deadlines most of the time, rather than letting things go on and on. And what precisely is expected? What kind of a result do you want back? So I'm sure we've all attended meetings where A, no action items were settled on, or B, if action items were settled on, there was no follow-up. So ensure someone is identified who can own each action item and commit to sorting it and following it through. And this is all about your team taking ownership of their role and their role in the process, right? Their part in having an effective team and, you know, taking things forward. So I always insert an agenda item in every meeting that I run that says follow-up items. So very early on in the meeting, especially if it's a weekly tactical meeting, it's a great time to do that. Check in and follow up on action items that are outstanding, right? How are you going with that? Are you stuck? Do you need any help? Where's progress on that? Is that completed yet? You know, that's due on Friday. If you're having a meeting on Monday, that's due on Friday. Are you set? Are you going to be able to deliver on time? That sort of a thing. So follow up and check in. So brilliant. Now, disc profiles. I know I ran this by you last month. I'm going to run it by you again because it's relevant to what we're talking about this time. I'm going to run you through this really quickly, and then we'll talk about during the meeting as a leader, what kind of behaviors do you need to exhibit? We talked about who's going to be around the table with you, but what kind of behaviors do you need to exhibit as a leader in order to have an effective meeting? But first, disc. I know a few of you on the call today have had me do your disc, which is brilliant. So you know the benefit of understanding who you are, how you communicate, what your strengths and challenges are, how you are as a leader, and how you can communicate better with different people around you who are different personality styles or behavioral styles. So the report that you got, right, was 30 pages. There's heaps of stuff in there, heaps of meat, right, about do's and don'ts that you can share with your team about communicating with you. Like for me, when I talk to someone who's a detail-oriented person on my team here at Generate, I say, you know what, I'm an I hate detail. So cut to the chase for me and give me the bullet points. So that's a do, right? When you get your extended disc, there's a power disc page in there, which basically tells you what parts, what areas of leadership are your strengths and which might need a bit of work. And there's a whole section at the end on self-reflection. How do other people see you, right? So you can complete a couple of these exercises with someone you trust. You know, how other people perceive you. Does it match up with how you perceive yourself? And what can you improve? So this report generally retails for $125 plus gist. I'm providing it for you guys on this webinar and last month, if you were here, for $89 plus gist. So if you would like your own disc, and that comes with a 10-minute one-to-one debrief on the phone with me, right? So we can go through what's in there. Or if you want bulk pricing for a team of 5 or more people, we can do that as well. So in the chat section, right, you've got a little toolbar here on Zoom, you've got chat, pop open the chat button, type in there disc, and I'll be back in touch with you to get this sorted, right, what you need and how we can best make that happen. So put disc in the chat if you're interested. Now, if you're watching this as a recording, there's an email for me at the end of the slide, at the end of this presentation. So email me when you see that email pop up. If you're watching the recording, email me and put disc in the subject line, right? So you'll see that at the end of the session. Okay, so what do you need to do as the leader of the meeting? What kind of qualities do you need to exhibit in the meeting that are going to give you the best result? Okay, so the first one, oh, hello. Why am I starting on 4? Oh no, I reordered. The first one, I'm going to pop them all up and just talk about them. Okay, cool, perfect. Number 1 is set the expectation. You are the leader, so act like it. Set the expectation for the outcome, for how people are to behave and communicate, for who, you know, taking ownership of action. But, you know, it's kind of like laying out the rules of the game before you play. So set the expectation at the beginning of the meeting. You also need to lose your focus on I and focus on we. You as the leader of the team do not need to do everything, right? You have a team around you. Everybody's got different skills and unique things that they bring to the table, and they can support you, and everyone should be working as a team to accomplish practice objectives. So, you know, forget about I need to do this, I can do it myself, or it's all about me as the leader of the team, what I say goes, right? That's the other way to think of it. And focus on, we are a team. We are going to collectively identify what's the best way to tackle this project this week, or whatever it is, right? The team's there to help you. You're the leader of the team, and the buck stops with you ultimately, but how can you bring the team on board? It's all about we. The third thing you need to do is underscore people's words. Now, what this means is when you've got someone in the meeting, and I'm checking my timing, we're doing good. When you've got someone in the meeting who pops up with a great idea, perhaps, and you like it, and it supports what you're trying to accomplish, reinforce that. Say, Siobhan, that's a great idea. I really like that. And then repeat what it is they said, the same words or the same phrasing. The interesting thing about that is that when something has been said once, it has a 25% chance of being validated and, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, let's do it. When spoken again by the same person, the chance of being validated goes to 50%. So if somebody says it twice, right? It's their idea, they put it forward twice. If two different individuals speak the same idea, the chance of validation goes up to 75%. So if a team member says something that you really like, you want to put forward, you validate it, you underscore it, so that it has a better chance of being taken up by the group. Make sense? All right. The fourth point that you need to, your behaviors in the meeting as the leader, is to build trust with your team by acknowledging and valuing the people at the table. So acknowledge the fact that they've invested precious time with you at this meeting. Yes, you're the boss. Yes, you called the meeting and you invited them there, but you're still breaking into their day. Make it worthwhile. Thank them for bringing their unique perspective to the table. Acknowledge that everyone around the table is going to have different perspectives and they're going to bring different strengths. And make sure you let people know you value that. The fifth thing, read the body language in the room. You can watch people's eyes. You can watch whether they're leaning forward and paying attention or whether they're kind of leaning back and relaxing and, checking out. So pay attention to the people who are in the meeting, because that will tell you how you need to bring them back into the meeting, right? So pay attention. Also, when you watch who looks at who, so we've all been in meetings where an idea has been put forward and, I don't like the idea. I look at Joe across the table from me. We share a look like, oh, brother, here we go again. Not a great idea. I don't want to do that. If you're paying attention as the leader of the team, you can see that happening and you can call it diplomatically at the time. Hey, look, I know some of you guys may not like this idea, but here's why I think it's a great one. So let's talk through it. Keep your mind open, right? If you're paying attention, you'll notice that and you'll call it out in the meeting in a good way so that you can get past it. You'll notice who people look to as influencers within your team, right? If one particular team member, if a lot of comments get addressed to a particular team member and they look at that team member while they're talking, that's an influencer in your team. That's someone who your team looks up to, a tribal leader, right? So if you can get that tribal leader on board with your idea or something that you want to take forward, then that's someone who the team look to. Might be you, might not be you, and that's okay, right? So it's getting on side with your tribal leaders, those people that your group looks to physically, right? They're going to look to them in the meeting and address comments to them. Okay. 6 is don't assume. Kind of like we talked about assuming that your C was going to be bringing a wet blanket comment to the table, which they might. Don't think of it as a wet blanket comment, right? Think of it as they're just being a C and they want to make sure that you're doing things the right way to get behind it, right? So don't make assumptions. Don't complete people's sentences. I do that to my husband sometimes. So because I like to talk, I'm verbal. So you will have, depending on your own personality style as the person running the meeting, you might have a tendency to jump in and finish people's sentences. Don't do that. You are the leader of the meeting. Knock that tendency on the head and just let people say their piece. 7, foster action. There's an analogy that John Maxwell makes in a book about this topic, and he says, don't fly the plane if you can't land the plane. Like, how does that apply? He describes it and it makes total sense. So running the meeting is like flying a plane. If you can't land the plane, which means settle on action items, achieve a goal, make something happen as a result of that meeting, then don't have it. So I thought it was a cool story, a cool analogy. So help the team settle on action items. Don't fly the plane if you can't land the plane. Now, there's a bonus resource for those of you guys that are here this month that I'm just going to email out to you directly, and it's called the Engaging Meetings Checklist. Now, this is a John, you'll notice at the very beginning of this presentation today, there were a couple extra logos on the title slide. So the material that you're hearing today is licensed to be delivered only by people like myself and Craig, who are executive directors with the John Maxwell Team. So this is part of their program from the John Maxwell Method of Leadership. There's a whole curriculum in there that I'm pulling this from. So this is the Maxwell Method of Leadership Engaging Meetings Checklist. You'll receive this after the session by email, so don't worry about taking a screenshot or anything. But there's tick boxes on here for you as the meeting organizer and the leader of your team. How do I make sure that I'm doing my homework, that I'm preparing, that I'm not winging it, right? This is a great tool to keep on hand every time you need to get a meeting started. Because, as my buddy John says, connecting increases your influence in every situation. So leadership is influence, right? So connecting increases your ability to lead in every situation, right? So we're talking about how to better connect in your meetings. Now, if any of you guys have had questions for me, please pop those into the Q&A now, and I will answer those. Let me hop up to my toolbar. Brilliant. Ooh, what's this? Cool beans. Oh, Anne, brilliant. Thanks for that. I don't see any questions. If you've got a question, open up your toolbar, the Q&A section, type your question in there, hit send or submit, and I will see that and I will answer it for you on the spot. In the meantime, I'll keep my eye open for that. In the meantime, here's what I want you to do. Email, right? So if you're watching this recorded, right, you're not live, email Craig and Jennifer at generate.solutions, put DISC in the subject line if you want to know about a DISC report for yourself or DISCs for your team to help you run better meetings. Or if you're here, simply type DISC in the chat box now, and I'll be back to you within the next day, right? So, do we have questions? Nope. Brilliant. What's coming up the next couple of months? I can't believe we're talking about the end of the year. This is just crazy. I want 2 more months tacked onto the year. I'm just saying that right now. Give me 2 more. I'll have a 14-month year. I'm perfectly fine with that. Cool. So I've got a couple things out of order today. We've got next month, the power of teamwork. So this is all about qualities of world-class teams. And this is going to contain some more information from that John Maxwell Method of Leadership material, that curriculum. So it's the 17 Indisputable Laws of Teamwork, which is a great book. So we're going to be covering, I don't have enough time to do the whole training in an hour, but I'll cover some snippets from that next time. So we'll talk about how you enhance connection, the importance of accountability among your team. In October, we're going to be talking all things efficiency. So stay out of overwhelm. I've got a workshop that I run all the time on my top time management hacks. And it's like a band that's got a really popular song and they've been playing it for 20 years and they get sick of playing it at every concert. I get sick of time management workshops, but it's really good stuff in there, right? So this is an old time-tested favorite that we're going to be rolling out for you in October, which is top prioritization techniques, tools to keep yourself on track, and work with your brain to get more accomplished in the day. November is the end of the year. So we're going to share with you how you do a powerful year-end review, how to pull learnings out of what's happened, and how to identify some opportunities for change in 2021. So that's where we're heading. I've got one other comment. Hold on 1 second, because I don't want to miss a. Okay, brilliant. And there we go. That's us for the day. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. You know that we do this all for you. This is to grow you, grow your people, and help you grow your practice. Would I love for you to have me help you with something along the way? I'd love that. But I know that's not, reasonable for all of you on the call. But if you need anything, reach out. We are more than willing to help. It doesn't cost you anything to have a conversation, no obligation. Just give me a buzz, send me an email, and I'm around to help you. So have an awesome day, and I will see you next month. Hi. Jen Myers here. I hope you enjoyed that video and it got you thinking about how to implement that topic into your practice. If you have any questions whatsoever, myself or Craig, we are more than happy to answer questions for you and help you understand how to apply what you've just watched and what you've just heard into your specific practice in your unique situation. So please click the button that says book a meeting, and we are more than happy to spend a few minutes with you going through the information and how you can apply it. So thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.